Welcome to another FaceHammer hobby video, and I'm going to talk about some thermic plasma regulators that I've painted for Seed Studios as a commission. I just want to talk through the models and how I went about getting the effect. So these are quite simple to do. So firstly is the assembly, is to try and make sure you hide the seam line down here, and it's quite tough. These models aren't brilliantly designed. It is terrain though, so you can kind of get away with it a little bit. But what you want to do is essentially I airbrushed. I basically undercoated these in a black. Then I'll airbrush a silver. So I used Iron Hand silver mix to basically coat it in a metallic color underneath everything. So I sort of undercoated it in that. Then what I've done is I've airbrushed the kind of this area, which is this kind of casing in like a grey. The client wanted it to match the existing table, and there's a lot of grey. So I've done that, and I've airbrushed that in Adeptus Mechanica standard grey up to actually Stonewall grey, which is it's an old Fortress grey rip-off from Vallejo. Basically, it's a Vallejo air paint. So to get you a light colour, then all I've done is then I've come in with a brush and I've painted all these brass bits with Runelord brass, and then for the lighter bits I've used Brassy Brass from Game Colour to give it more red and more tonation. So I've got a two-tone brass. You can see here you've got this this lighter, sort of richer, redder brass, and this more washed out silvery brass. All of the the piping was basically just painted in contrast black Templar. You can water down paint if you want. You can do whatever. It's just black. It's just thinned black paint essentially. And then what I've done is done all those details, and the next stage is a streaking grime. Now, people who aren't familiar with that, it's this product from AK Interactive. It's an enamel paint. Now you can actually, I put this through my airbrush, no problems. I don't need to worry about using any horrible thinners. I just put it straight from the pot. You don't need to thin it at all. This stuff is great. A little bit of a myth around enamels and white spirit. You do not need to varnish these before you do this stage. Now the reason is actually acrylic paint is essentially plastic, so there's a lot of myth about it'll melt the paint and you can't mix oil and acrylic. I mean, it's enamel, it's not quite the same, but then all you do is you paint the entire thing. It'll look brown. The whole thing will look brown. And what you do is you use these things, Q-tips or cotton buds, and I got these from Amazon. I got a massive pack of them, so I got this sort of more in-depth, sort of pointed head and a rounder head. And all you do is use white spirit. Don't have to use the AK Interactive one. I didn't. I've got a big tub of Odorless Artist Mineral Spirit or White Spirit, but this is the AK Interactive one. I've not tried it with this. I'm sure it works because it's from the same range. And all you do is, I've got a little glass pot, and that's important, not a plastic pot, and then because it will probably melt. And then you just dip the Q-tip and you just flood the entire area with mineral spirit or white spirit, and then I use these two-headed, so I use this one and then this one to wipe it off. And all you literally want to do is leave the streaking grime. You can see it is heavily weathered, so it's hard to see, but you can see it's very much in the recesses, and the whole point of that is to basically make it look weathered and aged. And the nice thing about, you can see this kind of mark here that I've achieved to almost look like staining. And the nice thing about these is you can keep playing around with them until you're happy. I've not used them a lot, so I'm kind of experimenting a little bit. And it's kind of what I like doing. This is the kind of the color it comes out of the pot in, this kind of color here. And then you can literally just work this off with white spirit. The nice thing about it is once the white spirit is dry, you can keep manipulating it. You want to leave it a little bit of time to dry when you put it on, just to make sure it cures. I'm talking like 5-10 minutes. I've got a hairdryer, so I just hair dried it until it didn't look shiny. You don't leave it too long because it becomes very hard to take it off. So all I do is use the white spirit, take it off, and get it almost cleared off. Now, what this essentially does is give me a very nice stained brown wash. I don't know what it is about streaking grime, but you get like a tonal wash and it looks great. I love it. So I really enjoy doing it with 40k, especially if I want to do any sort of grimdark style models. Then essentially, there's a lot of work gone into this afterwards. So what I've done is I've used dry paint to dry brush grey. So you can see at the top here, you can see this kind of this lighter grey. This is actually stippled, and I've stippled it round here as well, and you can see it here. And I've just used a Series D brush, and I've just stippled from Arts Opus. So check those guys out if you can get those from Element, and if you click for our link, that really helps us. So you go in there and you can see I've done all that stippling. Then what I've done is essentially I've just done a lot of weathering. So I've stippled on this stuff here, which is actually a product called Track Rust, which is this weathering pigment. Again, it's from AK, but you can use any. You use Secret Weapon, Vallejo, whatever you want. And that for me was to try and just get this kind of caked on rust effect. If you want it really textured, you can use like an acrylic resin, like this texturizer, and you make a paste, and you can basically put this into the onto the model in like a thick, almost like caked on mud effect. So you can mix it in a palette and then just like put it on. Be a bit careful not to overdo this, because like weathering's very easy to overdo, and actually pigments are a little bit of a pain because they stain. So to get them off is a bit of a pain in the ass. So I would say don't go overboard. Less is more. You can always add more. It's a lot easier than taking away. I mean, that's the good thing about streaking grime and using enamels. Is you can take away, and it's very easy to get back to the original. I've also used Lilac Oxide mixed with Corellia Green Shade. I don't like Lilac straight from the pot. I think it's too pale. And what I've done is I've used that mix to stain the brassing. So I thought anywhere where there's going to be a bit of corrosion, a little bit of oxidization around these pipes here, essentially here. And then all I've done is basically stippled on that weathering, and I've put on also this lighter pigment, which is this Green Earth Terra Verde. This is what you've got here, and I really like this because you get this kind of like dusty oxidization. So I've not done a lot of it on here. I probably could have done more. This is probably my favourite bit here. Opa's a bit bizarre. It's a bit of like caped on stuff because it's in the streaking grime. It almost looks like it's framed by the dark brown. I really like how that's come out. And then I've painted things like this display. The skull. I've just picked that out in bone color actually before I streak and grimed. I've just highlighted it afterwards. I've done the lens. I've done this light here. So this light is just through DW paints. I've done obviously the Lilac Oxide on here. Now the other weather pigment I've used is it's quite a bright green. Now the reason for that is the client wanted the plasma in a drab green, so sublime, so not too bright. So obviously not like the Necron neon glow. I would have normally gone a lot brighter, but I thought, well, actually they want it more drab and dreary. So I thought I'd use this pigment because it's almost the same as my plasma, and I would make it look like there's leakage on the thing. So I wanted to make sure there was leakage sort of around the seams on the tank. It's kind of the crust is kind of breaking up the metal and it's kind of seeping through. It's not quite through, it's just a subtle glow. There's some seepage from these overflow vents at the bottom, these coolant vents, and again you can see it's kind of hit this pipe and done a little bit. And a lot of this is just a lot of fun, really. I actually oversprayed here the green on the plasma glow, and all I did is weathered it to make it look like part of the weathering. And the same here. I wanted it to look kind of like underneath. It's kind of coming up and seeping out from underneath the table, like and there's a bit here again, just on this vent here. So yeah, just wanted to make sure I had a little bit of this green. If I turn upside down, you can see it's kind of concentrated around the bottom, and it's there to look like the plasma is leaking out. Now, obviously, like things like this display, I've done some lines on it to look like they're like gauges. So yeah, a lot of fun painting this. I really enjoyed it. The kind of, I like using like this stippling of the rust. This is actually like two tonal, so I've done that track rust in there. Yeah, it's I'm really pleased with how these have turned out. And then this again is the other one. I want to show this one off as well. So much of the same, really. I like this piece of weathering at the top here. This kind of, and this was all done with stippling. To make this is actually Rhinox hide and black first. I mixed the paint and did this. This is why you've got this, and then I've put track rust over the top. That's why it's two tonal. Just remembered that now. I was trying to remember how I did it. And I've got like this bit of here, this bit of oxidization. The streaking grime you can see on the black pipes just made the leathery rubber look a little bit aged and a little bit gone off. And if you work with cars, know that they kind of look like that after a while. And yeah, so again, more seepage here, a little bit more, same sort of details picked out. I mean, they want to look match. Now the floor at the top, this is something I probably should talk about. So what I did in here is, before I did the streaking grime, I came in with a brush and I painted some details in like brass and metal. And then so the grey, so I had those areas, and with the streaking grime, and then I've just put in like the weathering in here to make it look like it's painted. Like, it's not really. There's literally only like 2 or 3 colours here, but because you've got the tonal variations, the washes, the streaking grime, and the streaking grimes ran into those recesses, and it's just made it look like it's all highlighted and picked out. You see even these pipes look like they've been painted, but they've not really. That's done in like the contrast black, and then I've where I've dry brushed, I've caught the top, so then the streaking grimes just come in and sorted that out for me. So it does a lot of the work for you. You can see these 2 pipes here. This one's got corrosion on it, this one doesn't. Is that the same? Just this one's got the wash on, this one doesn't. So again, they look like 2 different pipes. And this kind of continues through, and then there's the rust here, and then there's the corrosion at this end, and here, and you can sort of see a bit of a rust here. I should wish a bit of corrosion in here really, but it's sticks one after doesn't the other. But and here you've got the leakage coming from this light, and from the top here, and you can see the kind of the scuff marks where they would appear. I probably could have put a bit more on here, but I didn't want to overdo it because the grey was getting very very hidden. I think probably the next thing to talk about is going to be the actual paints I used on the plasma. So the plasma was airbrush. So you have to be very careful. So this was done at the end. Now, before I airbrushed this, anything on this, I gave it a once over of this. Now what this does, it seals the enamel work, it seals all the weathering powders and all the washes. I think I actually did a layer before I did the powders. So I did a layer of this. You've got to thin it. I'd recommend using Vallejo thinner. I used Tamiya and it went very, very weird. I was using the satin varnish. This is the matte. So this is the matte varnish. I'd recommend this. It's very, very good. I mixed this with Tamiya thinner for Tamiya thinner. Yeah, I did mix it with Tamiya thinner for mine. I'm going to switch to Vallejo thinner. I've used it in the past, I think, because Vallejo doesn't interact with paints quite the same way, and actually get an X20A thinner from Tamiya is actually quite hard. So I've switched to Vallejo. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is just experiment before you put it on the model and mix it outside of your airbrush. So I'll show you the colours I did on the plasma, but essentially what I wanted to do was mix up, and you can see here I've got shot glasses where, and these, you could buy a big pack of these, and it allows you to mix pre-airbrush. And what I've done is I wanted to try because I was trying to get a very specific off green, I've used a mix of Black Forest and Dark Angels green, or the equivalent from Game Air, to get a brighter base, because it's already going over like quite a dark model anyway. You don't need to go like start from black. And all I did there was airbrush that in all the recesses. Then I went up to Sick Green, which is this, again, it's a equivalent of Warpstone Glow. It's kind of the more common sort of first stage of Necron glow. And then I went into Sherwood Green, which is a really nice sort of luminous, but not too bright sort of lime. And then I knocked it back then with using the Undead Flesh mixed, and then I mixed this kind of aged white Vallejo Air into it. That last cup is actually 2 stages. It's one is pure Undead Flesh, and then it's a mix. Then I've just mixed it straight into it, and then done a bit. And you need less as you go up these stages. But it's just to show you the colours, and you can see the transition between the dark to the mid to the light, and then to the very light down the middle. And then all I've done is when you airbrush this, you've got to be a bit careful, because as you come in with the airbrush, like here, what will happen is the paint will fly down this and then spill out the sides and then come down here. And it's very specific, it happens here all the time because of this curve. So what you've got to do, and this is quite hard, you want to make sure you get the green in here in the first base coat, but not too much pressure. Turn the pressure right down and try and use the brush very delicately. And if you've got one of these infinities, they're really good trigger control. So you want to kind of just, they're dual action, so it's pressure and then back for paint. So you kind of want to do very gently like this, and then you just kind of want to start here and work your way across. If you start here and you miss slightly, what you're going to do is you're going to put the colour where you don't want it. So if you start here and work your way down, you could almost use the shape of the model to push the paint to the side by just using air here and just doing this and just working it down rather than coming into the air. And the other thing you can do, if you really wanted to, you could mask it, but I don't really see the point in that. I think if you're going to do something like this after you've painted a model, you need to be fairly good with your airbrush control. Don't have to use an airbrush. You could just base coat it, and then you could use a Series D or a dry brush to stipple. You're not going to get quite as smooth a finish. It's going to look a little bit more grainy or dappled, a bit like this kind of effect here. Not to say it's wrong. I know Artist Opus have got some cool videos on how to paint these using Series D, so check those out. But yeah, just come in and do that green, do the next green, do the next green. Now I actually did 2 coats. Sometimes it's better, and for the meme, is to do 2 thin coats, because you don't want to try and put loads of paint on, because with an airbrush particularly, it's going to move around as you're spraying air into it. So if it's not dry, it's going to start spidering and moving around. So what you want to do is do a very thin coat and come back to it. And because you've got 2, you do one, do the other, come back, and it doesn't take very long. I mean, once you've mixed the colours and you're just there and you just flush the airbrush out each stage, you're going to be doing it in 10-15 minutes, to get that effect on there. Then all I've done at the end is I've thinned Bealtan Green wash, and I've just given it a wash to redefine these edges here, so that this kind of, you see this line here between the two, that line is ink, is the wash, and I've just thinned it and I've just washed it into those recesses, and that's it. 2 plasma conduits. I did these in probably just pure painting time. I did it over a day, so I don't know how long was spent on the actual paint. I mean, obviously there's a lot of fun to be had with these. I really enjoyed painting these. They're quite detailed for terrain, and probably a little bit higher level than I would do for my own gaming table, because it takes a lot of time. If you've got a big table to do, you can really simplify this. But the effect I think's come out really well. I'm super happy with these. I really hope the client's happy. And these will look great on any kind of Necromunda or 40k gaming table. So there's a lot of fun. So, and I'd say if you want to try out any of these AK Interactive products or weathering powders or washes, there's tons of videos out there on how to do it. Experiment, have fun. Terrain's a great thing to practice on, so you can practice on terrain without going onto models, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's not painted the best. It's just that painted is better than not painted. All these products are out there to try out and to test and to learn their quirks. And there will be times where you have mishaps. I know I've had that with varnish in the past, and other things that have caused big issues. But I would say that, you know, this commission was a lot of fun to paint. It's probably more fun than most of the other commissions I've had yet. So just because I find painting terrain very relaxing, therapeutic, and using these products is very organic process, and I quite like how artistic you can be with it, and the thought process you can go through when you're thinking about where the corrosion's going to be or what's leaking, and you know, I might have put some blood on here if it was for me from my Necromunda table, because I quite like the look, like someone's been offed on the platform or around the back of the generator. There's been someone's been put an end to, you know. But I think, yeah, great kit, really fun. And if you want to experiment with weathering powders, I would say pick these up. They're a great kit. Really easy to build. They're like 2-piece with this is a separate piece, this is a separate piece, a couple extra little bits, but simple to assemble. You'll be painting them in no time, and actually, for me, they're probably one of the best scenery pieces for allowing you to practice stuff like OSL. You know, you can do, if you really wanted to, you could do OSL on the lights, on these little bits here, on the light on top. You get to do different metallics, different casing, different things. You can do screen displays. I think if you want to practice these things, this is a great model to pick up. So I'd say pick this up, give it a go, and at the end of the day, you still end up with a nice piece of terrain for your table. And also you get to practice things like doing this glow and this plasma weapon type thing. So highly recommend having a go at these. If you want to get some stuff done for Siege, head over to Siege Studios, and go on there, let them know you come from us, and request what you want, and they'll get them back to you with a quote and stuff like that. So yeah, so these will be going off to the client today, so hopefully he'll be pleased. So thanks for watching this video, and if you have any questions or comments, then please put them below. If you like it, and subscribe and do all that sort of stuff. We do have merchandise available, and we appreciate anyone going through Element to buy either their products, their hobby products, their AK Interactive products, going to Siege and mentioning they came from our video, they heard about Siege through us, or you know, just supporting the show in general by joining our Discord and just being part of the community. There's a load of great hobbyists on there. We check it regularly. If you've got questions about your paint jobs or army lists or anything like that for Age of Sigmar, then just let them know. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you again soon.